Today's recording is a focused skill model making for design and technology, and I'm going to be doing this thinking about small storage. It's a project I do in my Year 8 groups, and small storage requires thinking about the product that's going to be stored and the best way of holding it, whether it's clipped or magnets or dividers. This is an activity where we're going to create a net and fold it up and put an insert into it. It's about developing your skills of measuring. It's about developing your skills of lining up angles and cutting accurately. As you do it, I would like you to complete the activity as I'm showing you, but the extension activity is to then think about how you change the interior of the product and maybe change the proportions of it, develop it. But at the very beginning, we want to have a standard piece. There's a fair bit of measuring today, as usual with this sort of product. We need to be accurate in the first place. As part of our quality control and quality assurance, we need to set ourselves up properly. Now, I'm conscious of what you have at home or don't have at home, I suppose. The adhesive that we're going to use today is potentially Pritt Stick. I'm also going to use some masking tape. You can use some sellotape, does exactly the same thing. Normally, if I'm doing card modelling, my preferred material, my preferred adhesive is PVA. Now that can be just white wood glue that you've got from other kits. I'm sure you've got other kits lying around. You can also, at a push, you can use some of this all-purpose glue. It's a little bit, you can get this for 50p a pound from the pound shop. Probably for 2 tubes of this. It's a bit smelly, don't really like it very much, but it can work in a pinch. You do need to clamp or hold your work together whilst you're using it. Our starting point today is going to be a sharp pencil, a ruler, and then later on we're going to use a pair of scissors to cut it out. Now I've drawn up already what we're going to make today and adjusted some measurements slightly, so when you're looking at that, this is me working it out. Again, as a designer, an architect, an engineer, an interior designer, a product designer, industrial designer, automotive designer, what you do is you sketch and you draw things and you adapt things and you improve things all the time. This is version 1 of a simple design, or rather when we do it today it's going to be version 3 of a simple design. It would be your job as the engineer or the designer to then turn that into something more useful. So this is just the beginning. Don't think this is a finished product. It's going to have a separate insert. One of the reasons that I've done it in a particular way is that I'm using cereal packaging, which is really good model making material. Now I'm using today Co-op cornflakes and I'm using Amazon packaging. 2 very different sorts of boards, and if you feel the texture of them, carton board, white board is very, very smooth, very high quality. Amazon, because this is packaging, are not spending money on such good quality card. It's not quite as compressed. It doesn't have the same stiffness. So it's going to probably give us some more problems when we come to bending curves up, but that's the property of that material. Anyway, let's give it a go. I'm going to set out. It's smaller than maybe I would have done it. It's not quite an A4 page because of the size of the cereal packet that I'm working from. If you've followed any of my other tutorials, this cereal packet is actually slightly bigger than my Weetabix cereal packet. So it's worth checking. This should fit on any cereal packet. I have had a bit of a look. Okay, so we're going to start I'll do this on plain paper. I've drawn it on cardboard, but to lead you through this process so that you can see it, I'm going to do it on plain paper. And we're going to begin with our initial packaging. And what I tend to do is find a baseline and then do the middle bit and the side bits kind of at the same time. So we're going to measure in our 2 vertical lines, which will give us room for the side, but we'll do all these angles afterwards. The key bit is to make sure that we've got enough faces on our object. Okay, so if you look at our key measurements here, it's 60, 120, that's 12 centimetres, and 60, which is 6 centimetres. I'm tending to work in similar numbers. The only difference here, I'm using 105, 10.5 centimetres in the middle. Just turned out that way. So let's get started. I'm going to measure from the bottom left of my page. I'm going to use my ruler, and you can do this directly onto your card. And if you are doing it directly on the card, just make sure you've got a decent edge on the card, because some of the edges, when I've cut mine or opened mine up, they've been a bit ropey. So let's get started. I'm going to measure 6 centimetres. Let's draw a line. 6 centimeters, and then from that 6 centimeters a further 12, 120 mil, and from that a further 6 centimeters, 60 mil. Now I'm looking at my line here. I don't know whether you can see it on the camera, but I've gone wonky on that line. That is not at 90 degrees to my page. So hopefully, if I do this right, all of my lines will be 90 degrees to the line that I drew, not to the edge of the page. And I did that because if you look at your carton board, you don't get those sort of nice clean edges. So I'm going to work off my line. One of the ways of getting 90 degrees, if you don't have a set square, which are the little triangles that you have in your maths set, hopefully you've used them in maths. If you don't have one of those at home with you, you can use the lines on a ruler, if you've got a transparent ruler, and line it up with your line, and that gives you 90 degrees. It's not the easiest way of doing it, but if you've got a math set, then this is much easier, and hopefully you do. So I'm going to just draw a line straight up from each of my marks there, trying to make sure they're at 90 degrees. I can also look at my parallel edge here. Now this is quite important, so what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to just check. I've got 12 there. I've drawn a little bit of a line. I'm going to just plot myself another 12 or 120 here. Yeah, I wasn't far off. Just to check, so I'm coming off a line that I've got there, 120. And again, if you've got the right tools, if you've got your set square, all this setting up is much, much easier than the way I'm doing it. And you can see where it's twisted off that base line. So I'm going to just do another one here off my 60. Okay, and join those up. It's worth checking twice along the way. I was just trying to see there whether I'm right at the edge of my page. And you'll see where my line's not quite straight with the edge of the page here, look. Because I was off here, that line's coming in there, which is okay, providing all of my lines here are at 90 degrees. So just check as you go. And again, I wasn't too careful with that because we're using that carton board, and you are probably drawing straight onto your card, so make sure it's that bottom line that's important. Anyway, let's get on with some measurements. We're going to measure up the middle first of all, and we're going to go 20, 105 and 60. So from this line we go 20, and I'm going to do the same over here, 20. From each of those two, there's my 1005, 105 there. Right, let's just draw a line between these two. Now, I'm going to draw a solid line here. If you've watched my other videos, you'll know the reason why. Normally, a fold line would be a dashed line, a dot, 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 something to indicate that it's bending there. To make it easier for you to see and to make it easier to draw on the card, we're going to do it as a solid line. Just be really careful when you come to cutting it out that you remember where your fold lines or your sort of known as bend line. We've got an object which is going to fold up front and back. This is 105. I'll write that number on. This is 20. You don't need to write these numbers. And this is 60. Okay, 20, 105 and 60, all in those lines. Now I'm going to extend to create my two side panels here. I'm going to just extend off using existing lines. Okay, and then we're very nearly done. This is actually quite simple packaging I'm doing here. If you were doing proper packaging, you would need to be considering how you would join things together, where any branding would go, any structural reinforcements need to go. But this is quite simple. Okay, so look, I didn't draw those lines all the way out there. You can do if you want, doesn't make any difference. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure on that one 60 and just check it. Yeah, going to measure that one 60 and just check it. Again, I'm writing numbers on, you don't need to. So what you start to think about is how, as it folds up, that bit is going to join that bit and that bit is going to join that bit. So if ever you weren't sure what the measurement is, you can look at whatever it's meeting and check that actually those need to be the same size. It's worth checking. So again, down here, we know that's 20, so you can hopefully predict how long this bit will be. 20. Right, and we'll just join those up. So I'm drawing a line from that corner there down to our 20, so from our 60 to our 20. And the same on the left-hand side. Okay, so that's actually the finished shape. What this is missing, and it's what students tend to miss quite often, is the method of joining it together. These are the glue flaps. They'll do really, really tiny glue flaps, and then it's not big enough that you can actually put any adhesive on it to join your box up. So, one glue flap, two glue flap. There's lots of different places you could put them. I'm going to do my next one. Where am I going to do it? I'm going to stick with my other drawing. So I'm going to come out left and right here. Keep this simple. Okay, so again, lining my lines up with my ruler, drawing a small line, and then freehanding in that corner there. Now our next one we're going to do, before I cut this one out, we'll do a next design bit or layout bit, and then we'll cut and assemble all of them at the same time, because we're going to do one insert, and then I'm going to challenge you to come up with an additional insert. Right, so here's our shape. We've got a front face, we've got two sides, we've got a back. What this is missing is a top. Now again, that's partly because the cereal packaging that I'm using isn't going to be big enough to allow me to do that, but also this is a small storage that I'm thinking of as a kind of a tray that's going to go into the tray. The method's very, very similar. I've slightly shrunk down the back edge. I've kept the front reasonably high. So we've got a change of angle on the side there. I've reduced the height of it so that it works as a tray. Again, you can work straight onto a piece of card. So if you look at my products on my card, we've drawn that one onto the cereal packet, and then I've ended up using some Amazon packaging for what we're about to do to make that work. So let's draw that second part. So this is what we're going to produce. If you want to look at the numbers, and we're going 50. Our top edge is 50. We're doing a 50 square up here. We're going to taper it down to 20 there. And because that's 20, that means that this one is also going to be 20. All right, I'm going to work from the bottom left of my page. And I'm going to measure 20, then a further 50, so that's 70, and then I'm going to measure 50, a further 50, and a further 50, so that's 5, 10, and 150. 5, 10, and 15. There's my 3. I'm going to just do that measurement up here again as well, because this is quite simple. So 5, 10, and 15. And just draw a line straight up the page from there. Now again, this is where your math's set. If you've got that with you, that'll give you 90 degrees, makes this much easier. Right, so that gives me my central bit of my two sides. So we're going to measure up in those two middle ones. I'm going a little bit quicker now because we've done the previous one, so hopefully you're in the swing of this. And you can always pause the video I've measured up 20, then I'm going to measure up 100, and then I'm going to measure up 50. So that was 20, 100, 50. And I'm going to join those up at the top. I'm going to join all the way across on this one, because that is this and then that line. These ones we're going to measure out 20 and 20, so you could draw your line all the way across. I'm going to just do it a bit. Technical term, that, a bit. It's not, it's very imprecise, it's not right. So look, there we go, 20, and measure that. 20, and on that side 20, right? So if we do a quick check on that, that's 50 and 50 and 50, so that's a square of 50 and 50. This backside is 50, that is 50. That was 100 from there to there, and then we've come out 20, come out 20. If I now join those up, that's going to give us the majority of our box. Okay, so once again, this is where you go, all right, that's brilliant, I'm ready to go. But you forget to do your glue flaps. The glue flaps are super important. This bit matches up with that bit, this bit matches up with that bit. So you could actually put glue flaps on any of those. So that's one option. As you're doing this sort of design, think, how could I make it better? How could I evolve this to make the use less material, or to use a thinner material, but I then make it more rigid by folding and clamping? How could I use less glue, which is durable and works really well? Then maybe you offset that. Those are questions you can ask yourself. Right, 100, 50, 50, 20, and 20. So if you're checking your measurements, just put 50 up here as well. You don't need to write the numbers on, that's just me. So we're 50 up, 50 across, 50, 50, 100. Check that you got those 4 glue flaps, and that should do us. Okay, and at this point, if you've drawn that and that onto your carton board, your whiteboard, I'm going to find out what this is called, this brown board. If you've done it onto that, then we're ready to start cutting out. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you've managed to get all of your drawing accurate. So what I'm going to start off with is making the main body of my card. Now what I tend to do, again you'll have seen me do this before potentially, is I know that my glue isn't going to set immediately. It's not going to cure and set immediately, so I need to do something that would hold it in position. Now if you were doing a piece of work in wood, you would be getting clamps and vices and all sorts of stuff ready to hold things in position. For card model making, you can't do that quite so easily. If you did a lot of it, you might want to make yourself some little springs out of paper clips. You'd probably want to make sure you've got some tape that works really well for you. You might want to think about which adhesive you've got if you do a lot, and I would suggest you kind of get yourselves up for a bit of model making. But I get my tape ready, which is there, so when I'm folding it up, I'm then going to bash out this using I've got quite a large pair of scissors. This is easier with larger scissors, but I've done lots of these with card, with school scissors as well. So let me cut it out. I'll stop talking. Okay, so there's the first part. So I've got my fold lines, and I've got the two sides and the front and the back. So what I'm going to do is cut out the second part, and then we'll start looking at assembling them and see how they go. Okay, so that's two parts made. Now I'm looking at this, just doing a bit of quality control. The brown card that I'm using here is definitely a little bit, so the Amazon packaging is a little bit harder to get a sharp corner on. So you might want to just check that you've kind of cut in where you need it. I'm just checking that I've got all my fold lines in position as a reminder. Now, when you're bending this now, what you're going to want to consider is whether or not you want the design to be on the inside or the outside. On this one, I'm going to have the design on the outside. On this one, ooh, that's hard to say, isn't it? I think I'm going to have the design on the outside again, because then it's covered when it's on the base. It is going to mean I'm going to have a majority sort of yellowy, bitty side, but let's see how it goes. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to start my creases by putting my ruler in position where the line is. If you just bend it, you'll end up with a horrible bent over curve, horrible radius on it. In sheet metal working, you would be using a sheet metal brake or some folding bars, and you would ease your material up. If it was with acrylic or something like that, you would heat it up and bend it against some sort of jig to hold it at the correct angle. If you were doing it in some of your thinner polymers, you might use a scoring tool to score a crease into it. I'm going to just take my time, get that bent up a little bit at a time. It would be interesting to see whether or not this company, Co-op, used as good quality packaging board as the Kellogg's or whoever make the proper brand cereals. This feels a little bit thinner to me than when I was making this Weetabix packaging. It's got a slightly different texture to it. I suppose what you would do as a model maker is you would choose whatever you've got to hand first of all, but if you were buying it, you'd have a preferred version. So look, I'm just easing up my folds a bit at a time. Again, if I was doing this on a laser, I would have put different line colours to engrave or to etch a design onto it or to cut around a profile. This would be the starting point, and you know, CAD's brilliant. Computer-aided design is fantastic because it allows you to make changes so quickly and so easily. But there's nothing to stop you when you have an idea. Nothing to stop you creating it using very, very basic materials that are to hand. Look, so I'm just checking everything's sort of flexible and ready to move. So I'll put this together. I don't see any problem with it. I'm going to put a bit of Pritt stick on for all the good it does. So a bit of Pritt stick on those flaps. And then I'm going to tape it, and then I'll probably end up reinforcing it. And again, if it was me, I would be PVA-ing. Now this is a coated board. PVA isn't actually going to work brilliantly on that, but it will work better than Pritt stick. So I've just bent that up, folded a corner, and now because that'll ping apart if I don't, I'm going to use a bit of, you'll probably have a bit of sellotape. People that have submitted to work with me have got some lovely Christmas tape on some of their work. All sorts. Fold it into position, just hold it with my tape. So if you were producing thousands of these, you'd have machines doing it. But if you're only producing, you know, a couple of them, let's say you're a small business and you're making items for Christmas or stuff, you'd get into, you'd try and work out a templating system that would allow you to draw around instead of all that marking out that we've just done. Or you would maybe give yourself a folding jig where you fold all of them to a certain point and then you turn them over and you do all of them to the next stage. So you'd create a system that reduced the amount of time wasted setting up and choosing tools. So you'd be more efficient with this. This is quite a long process because we're making one of them. Right. So there's a nice little usable tray as the starting point for a small storage project. It is very simple. There's nothing much to it. I have to say, it's actually quite a nice, that board is quite nice. If I was choosing it, I might find out where they're getting it from by phoning Co-op. But that's quite a nice finish to it. The Amazon packaging, I suspect, is going to be much harder to bend. Let's give it a go. If you find that your board's quite difficult to bend, one option is to score a line. People do score a line with scissors and stuff. You can score a line with something like a screw, but you'd ruin the edge of your ruler with that. I wouldn't suggest doing it. Sometimes a good creasing tool is a dead ballpoint pen. If you want to create a line, if I look on this here, there's already a line creased on it. Something that just crushes the material a little bit, and you know, an old ballpoint pen can do that. Anyway, let's fold this up and see what we get. So I said I wanted the Amazon to be on the outside, so I'm going to fold all these objects in. It's folded quite nicely. These are going to be harder. You can almost feel the material. You can hear it slightly pulling apart on the other side. So I expect our corners aren't going to be quite so sharp. It's done okay. Just looking at those. If this was corrugated card, you'd get probably a much more rounded edge, but that's worked all right. so I'm just easing all of those bits to make sure that they're mobile. That's actually bent really nicely, this Amazon card, and if you're anything like my house, you're probably getting all sorts of stuff through from Amazon these days. This board is a really good model making material, and again, you know, if you think about it, in fact I'm reading it here, I was just about to say can be recycled. This is made, contains 100 recycled fibre, but also if you think about making stuff out of this, it can then be recycled. You can put this in the compost heap in your garden if you've got a compost heap, or it can be recycled at the tip or in the bin. So it's a really good sustainable method of product design or industrial design, is to use these sorts of materials, whereas the ones that are coated, although the inks these days are much more recycled or much more recyclable because they're plant-based, if you look at this symbol here, widely recycled, it makes you think, well, okay, it's widely recycled, why isn't it totally recycled, or why isn't it made from totally recycled materials? So, you know, well done Amazon for making that choice. It's probably about cost as well, but this is a good opportunity to think about sustainability whilst we're doing this project. Put my tape on there just to hold it together whilst the Pritt stick pretends to set. Okay, so I've got those two bits put together, and what you've now got is one tray that sits inside another tray. Okay, so from a design point of view, that's quite interesting. You could make a second one of those to fit in next to it. You might also, if it was me, I start thinking about how maybe that could stand up, or maybe it goes next to it as part of a sort of shelving system. And you really start to think about how those things go together. So as an activity, as a task, what you need to be showing evidence of is producing those two parts. Now, whether they fit together or not super critical. You might also think about, rather than just submitting it unfinished, possibly covering that with something else, or using a board which is maybe a bit more decorative. But that was an exercise in sort of measuring out and marking out. It's meant to help you with your own design work. This is not an end product by a long shot. This should allow you to test and to work things out. Now, we'll do a drawing based on this as well if you're doing perspective drawings or orthographic drawings. Okay, so well done if you've managed to get that done. Well, good luck with getting that done, and I look forward to seeing what people have produced.